This lineup you see on the screen right now is the top projected one for tonight's Cowboys Bucs Super Wild Card Weekend Showdown on Monday Night Football. It's a good lineup to be used for cash games, but not going to be one you want to deploy in the big tournaments today. So you're going to want to do instead is try to use this information within this lineup as well as other top projected lineups to figure out how everybody else in the field will be building tonight. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Spags here for the live version of the Showdown videos we've all known and loved throughout the regular season, but it's time here. It's going to be Monday Night Football, big game on the board tonight with Cowboys Bucs, and one that I think, quite frankly, the Bucs are going to get steamed up quite a bit. Let's do our usual process, try to get through everything as we do here. Let me go back to the big screen here. Let's start with the Vegas lines as we always do. Of course, Dallas, a 2.5-point favorite going into Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay, 2.5-point dog at home. So again, the public markets here still favoring Dallas, but you go on the internet, you go across DFS sites, you go into the best ball tournaments, playoff best ball, of course, a great time on Underdog that we had drafting last week. People love Tampa Bay. People not as big on Dallas, especially Dak Prescott. So I think that same thing will show its face today in a spot where I do personally expect Dallas to win. And worth pointing out, Pete and I got everything right on Friday in our playoff predictions, so we're doing well. But let's talk about this implied totals here. Dallas 24 implied points, Tampa Bay 21.5 implied points. So Dallas going to be expected to have about 3 touchdowns and a field goal. Tampa Bay a little bit more than 3 touchdowns for them. Shout out to the chat as well. We got Ross here. We got Dustin Gill, the people's champ, back at work. Yes, it is a national holiday, but I am here because Lord knows I'm playing the DFS slate. I am playing the DraftKings Showdown with $1 million to first place tonight. You guys should too. But let's talk about some more of this data as we get through it here. So you can see the stochastic data here, which of course I recommend everybody get into your own life. It is a core part of my process, obviously knowing firsthand what they do over there, still being attached to the family over at Stochastic as well, doing shows there once a week. But I love the data they have, I think, not for just the accuracy of what the projections are, but because of the fact that they're used so heavily, because of the fact they are very typical, I guess, but on the high end of typical of what you're going to find across the industry. You can find some advantages based upon this data. Top projected plays today going to be Tom Brady. Yes, let's cap off the week. It's a good slate to do that. Was very knocking on the door of the Millie Maker last night. Unfortunately, Hayden Hurst couldn't get there because of the Ravens not willing to take that one to overtime. But I feel good about our wild card takes, and I think it's going to carry on for one more day here. Tom Brady, top projected player on DraftKings, according to Stochastic. Dak Prescott, number 2 here. Tom Brady's got 17.5 DK points. Dak Prescott, 17.2. Dak's more expensive, so Dak is going to be inherently the more of a tournament play, a little bit more of a optimizer play that you're not getting to as much as well. Tom Brady's going to be in basically every lineup, as I'll show you guys in a second here with the lineups I built before the show. CeeDee Lamb coming in as the 3rd highest projected guy at a 17.1 DK point projection. He's also, as you can see here, the highest dollar guy on the slate, $10,600 on DraftKings. So he is certainly a tournament play that when you see the wide receiver price this heavily, there is a little bit of a tournament advantage taking the guy at captain at that point. But also it does make it more possible for Dak Prescott to be a captain just because of the salary, just because of the fact that theoretically Dak could create value for multiple pass catchers. And in that case, then it's possible that Dak could be a more appreciated captain at the end of things than he will be going into it. Some of the top value guys on the slate, according to Stochastic data, you can see here, Jake Ferguson probably going to come up a good amount, $200. Cameron Brate right there as well. He's also at $200. Both these guys projected for about 1.75, 1.72 DK points. Neither projection going to excite you that much, but ultimately getting a $200 guy in there is one way to get lower owned lineups overall. That said, if these guys get a little bit overrepresented, like Cam Brate might be, I think Jake Ferguson probably won't be overrepresented. And also important to keep an eye on the actives. It's possible, I guess, Ferguson could sit and they could just go with Peyton Hendershot at tight end. Point being, though, these guys are in play as the value plays. It certainly has some upside. Probably not ones you want to put at captain, but certainly ones that can give you some salary savings. And the rest of the guys you can see here, I think Cade Otton out of the guys who are actually in a rotation, who do kind of make sense based upon how Tampa Bay likes to attack things. And also Tom Brady, I think the pressure he's going to be experiencing tonight, you could see a lot of checkdowns going Cade Otton's way. So 5.88 projection on him. I think out of all the value guys, he's probably the pivot you want to go to where you're still getting salary savings, but you're not quite spending all the way down for the more obvious guys like Cam Brate, Jake Ferguson, Scotty Miller, all of that. And with Cade Otton too, you're also getting leverage on the Cam Brate lineup. So I think that does make a good amount of sense. Ownership wise, and again, this is stochastic data. It'll get updated throughout the day. So make sure you're a member there if you want to see the best data out there for ownership projections and all that stuff. Combine it with ETR if you want to get an even better read on the industry. Combine it with ETR and roto grinders if you want to know how everybody's going to be approaching things ownership wise. But I think this is a good way to look at it, and my favorite way to look at the ownership projections. We got CeeDee Lamb here at 56% overall ownership. Important to point this out right up top because that's basically exactly where his optimal rate is expected to be by stochastic today. Tom Brady going to be 56% owned. Dak Prescott 55% owned. And Chris Godwin, 53% projected ownership. All these guys going to be over 50%, and that is it for the projections of ownership on this slate. Lower owned guys we can look at here. If you want to just throw in a lower owned guy in the hopes that they can bubble up and give you a meaningfully different lineup, Russell Gage, Ryan Suckup, which, by the way, I do not believe this ownership will hold at 19%. My thought is he's going to end up actually in a lot of lineups tonight. I would guess closer to the 33% range overall, but that's my guess based on how casuals approach this stuff, based on the fact that the kickers are going to come up very easily in optimizers. I think this is a bit of an undersell here on Ryan Suckup relative to these team totals. You have the Bucs D also under 20%. I think they come in closer to 25%. These are my gut reads, though, based on how these have gone all season long. K. Dotton, again, under 20% here. I think he makes sense. Noah Brown, a little bit less so because T.Y. Hilton has been coming for his snaps recently. I would personally prefer to get T.Y. Hilton at half the ownership of Noah Brown. Cowboys D, Julio Jones, Cam Brate, Jake Ferguson, Scotty Miller. These are the guys who are going to be very cheaply owned and also very affordable to get into lineups overall. So they've definitely looked too good. Fade K on a DraftKings too highly owned. I think that's a bad take. I think that's one where people will certainly try to jam in Mike Evans more. We'll try to jam in Chris Godwin more. Evans in particular, I think will pick up more steam than he usually does because of the fact that he is a guy who went off in week 17, which is the last game the Bucs meaningfully played. And also some of the advanced analytics will point people to kind of what a similar situation is it could be for Dallas tonight, where Dallas tries to get a lot of pressure. They often get a lot more pressure than the Panthers, but I think people also have heard that throughout football takes throughout the week. So I think this is not the right take. I don't think K-Dot's going to be that highly owned. Personally, he will be a value guy who gets in there, but those guys have a lot of value if they do get one touchdown basically in 2 catches. And I think K-Dot's a guy that I could very easily see making a winning lineup tonight. So I would not fade him. I think that's not a great take. Spags kind of lied at my running out in a 500-man winner take all. You're running pretty close to the optimal there with one pivot, I would guess. But you know, the lower field stuff, the smaller field stuff, you're trying to play closer to the optimal. So you're probably trying to play closer to this lineup here that had Tom Brady, Dak Prescott, Chris Godwin, Fournette, Suckup, and Maher. I would not play both kickers. I would instead maybe go down to a K-Dotton or somebody else off of one of these guys. Personally, I think Suckup will be higher owned, so I would say go Maher and then cut down Suckup to somebody else who has an actual pass game upside. But I think also flipping the QB and the pass catcher would be one way to try to get different too. So your mileage is going to vary. I think those winner take all formats are not my preferred cup of tea, but I think really you're trying to get, you know, a little bit of a pivot off of the optimal. You're still trying to play it safe for the most part, but you're also not trying to galaxy brain it too much because you're just trying to beat 499 guys, and it's just not that much of a field compared to these big GPPs with $1 million up top and all that stuff. All right, let's look at the optimal lineups here. And as I always talk about, I think this is the most important part of any slate where you go in, you use the projections, you know, if you, again, use a blended average if you want of ETR, stochastic, all that stuff. But I think you look at these top 25 lineups, you're going to see a lot of lessons that are going to be very important for how the field's going to approach things. And you can see here, Tom Brady, 34% of lineups in the utility spot, 32% of captain. So he's not quite in everyone, but about as close as you can get without being in 100% of lineups. Chris Godwin, 64% utility, 24% of captain. He'll also be very highly owned. Nobody here in 100% of lineups, though. So that does make it a little bit tougher to figure out who would be the pivot points, who would be the guys you could try to get away from. If you do ever see a guy at 100%, that's the guy I would try to pinpoint right away as, oh, the field's going to be super heavy on this guy, so take him out of some lineups. If there's 2 guys there, then try to do max 1 out of these 2 guys who are coming up at 100% of lineups. That's generally the showdown approach. It actually also works pretty well. 2-game slates, 3-game slates, all that stuff. Team stacks also going to be important here. You can see that 24 out of 25 lineups are going to be, in fact, including at least 3 Bucs. Not a lot, though, including 5-man Bucs. Not a lot, including Dallas 5-mans. So I think the onslaughts are very much on the menu today. And, of course, by the end of this video, I'll give you guys 3 pro tips that I'm seeing based upon all the stuff we're talking about here for how I would try to get unique on the slate. It's been helpful throughout the season for some people out there, so stay tuned until the end, and I will cover that one before we go. But yeah, 24 out of 25 lineups having at least 3 Bucs. I think that would certainly give you an advantage to go to 4-man Cowboys as well. I personally, of course, this is a personal bias thing, I think the Cowboys win this one. I think the disrespect they've been getting from some of the markets, and I get it. They got carved up by Sam Howell last week, but, you know, it's the first game of a guy who does actually have an okay pedigree, played some real guys in college at UNC. We've seen also Dallas struggle against Gardner Minshew, but a great coach there. The Bucs, I personally feel like They do not have the coaching to make up for the fact that the Cowboys are going to get pressured roughly 25% of the time. That's the rate they've been getting pressure at all season long. But also the fact that I don't really care about the Bucs getting back Ryan Jensen at center. That line is not very good. That line is also injured. You get a center back in the mix. He's going to have to get back up to speed. The conditioning might not also be there. So if that's a reason why you're going, oh, Dallas won't get home a lot, Dallas is going to get home a lot. And I think this is a spot where Brady can absolutely win. But I think people are treating it like, oh, the Bucs are a Super Bowl contender. I think they're just as live to lose in this round. And I think, too, Dallas has a lot of things that they are not going to like that's going to make Tom Brady very upset on the sidelines doing his dramatic bullshit that he does every single week, it seems like. Kicker, another important spot to cover. You're seeing 64% Brett Maher coming in. I think there might also be a little bit of captain. Also 8% captain for Brett Maher. Obviously, the field doesn't play kickers as much as these projections are going to want to play kickers. That said, because the projections push so heavily towards Maher and also give you a good amount of suck up as well, I think these guys, 4% ownership for suck up at captain too. I would say that trying to get away from kickers is a core thing I'll be doing tonight. Doesn't mean these guys are bad plays. In fact, they come up this often because they're good plays. But whenever kickers come up too easily, that's when you start to get away from them. That's when you start to take some risk and just not play the kickers. Kickers are more of a play that you're for Pius Devil. If you're playing a 500-man winner take all, a kicker is great because they can give you 9-10 points, and that's 9-10 points that you then don't have to try to get from the Cade Ottens of the world, the other guys, the Jake Fergusons, all those guys. But that said, in a big field tournament, that 10 points could easily get dwarfed by one guy putting up 15. Could be Scotty Miller catching a 40-yard bomb and a touchdown. That's enough to beat a kicker. A lot of ways for kickers to not win in big field stuff. So when they come up this easily, that's the first thing I try to strip away from. So for me, capping ownership on Maher, capping ownership on Suckup, and making sure to not get these guys in both lineups is a key thing. There are not a lot of lineups that win with two kickers in them, but people play them a lot, especially in lower total games. So I think that's a bad move, especially given that this is not that low of a total game. Certainly possible there are going to be some field goals. The Bucs overall force teams to kick field goals at high rate and also kick field goals at I think a top in the league rate. Let me see real fast. Yeah, the Bucs kick field goals. Actually pretty low, surprisingly. Bucs kick field goals 12th in the league, which is a little bit lower than I would have expected. Dallas does force field goals at an 18% rate, which is pretty high. But overall, I think doesn't really matter what the advanced analytics say. It matters how people are going to play it. So if people are going to play a lot of kickers, just try to get away from them just because they don't have the ceiling you normally like. Do I like the Cowboys defense on this slate? I think they're an interesting play because of the fact that, again, they don't come up in the optimization here at all. You got 24% Bucs, obviously not any at captain coming up. But I think the fact that Dallas gets that pressure, the fact that Brady can throw some picks, and Brady's also going to try to force the ball downfield is a pretty potent combination going against a Dallas team that is really good and I think does have some weaknesses for sure. But I just don't think the Bucs are the team to exploit it. Byron Leftwich going to be a fake sharp, I think is a take that I feel as well that Ross is saying here. I just don't think the scheming is going to be there for them to take advantage of it personally. And when you align that with the data pushing you towards more Bucs, I'd rather just get more Cowboys, and that includes Cowboys D. I think in 5-1 onslaughts in particular, Cowboys D is going to look really good. But I think Cowboys D is very much in play for me, and the fact that they're just not going to be easily projected is the thing that makes me like them a little bit more. The price tag, though, let me just double check that real fast because that's one I didn't look at that closely. 4,800 is a tough price tag. So that can be one thing where if you sense the field's ownership is going to be higher, it does come with a little bit of a risk profile, especially the disparity between the two price points. But I think that's what makes him a good tournament play in an onslaught. So yeah, I think Cowboys D, no issue there. Other things to note here. Good amount of Leonard Fournette, which makes that Rachaad White going to be a decent pivot. I do think the Bucs lean more on Fournette here just because of the fact that he has been more of the lead pass game back on the year. On the year, Leonard Fournette getting about 5 targets per game compared to 3.3 for Rachaad White. Fournette also running about 24.4 routes per game compared to 15 for Rachaad White. And there's been kind of this thought process that Rachaad White's the pass game back. In reality, though, they want Fournette in because they trust Fournette more as a blocker to keep guys off of Brady. And with that offensive line being so bad, there has been a lot of need to keep guys off of Brady. So Fournette would be the expectation. That said, for tournaments, I do think that Rachaad White's live as a pivot. I just expect Fournette to have the better floor and also probably a more of a captain-worthy ceiling. Whereas Rachaad White, I think if you don't play Fournette, you play Rachaad White in utility. I can't see him getting there as a captain personally. Best captain single entry large field. I would think based on this data, it would probably be Chris Godwin. Tom Brady will be a little bit higher owned in single entry stuff because people do like to get that floor and ceiling that a QB has. But the one way you can do that and flip that right away, especially in full point PPR formats, is trying to get one of the pass catchers. So I would say based on what we're seeing here, where Chris Godwin comes up 24% of the time, Tom Brady comes up 32% of the time at captain in these optimal ones, I would think that Godwin is probably going to be the lesser owned guy out of those two. So I would just take that one pivot into single entry. Of course, in a big field tournament, people will take that pivot quite a lot more. So in a big field tournament, Mike Evans, Cade Otton, those guys gain an appeal. Fournette gains an appeal. But in a single entry one, you just need to get different from one person's lineup. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. Give credit where credit's due. Bucs O-line kept Giselle off of Brady all season long. I don't know if you guys have looked up his new girlfriend, but it's worth it if you can. You want to Google that one a little bit. That's definitely a play that I think out of all the things Tom Brady's done wrong in the football field, I think he's doing well with though whatever the Eastern European named gal that he's seeing right now. But let's keep all this stuff in mind. Let's try to find some good lineups here, and also worth pointing out: no Tony Pollard, no Zeke coming up in the optimal lineups. I think those guys are both very live as plays. It's my personal instinct that Zeke is going to be the more involved playoff back, but the Bucs run defense on the year is okay. Negative 10% DVOA on the year, which is certainly a better than league average mark. Also a negative success rate, or a not good success rate, and a negative EPA for the Bucs run defense. So going to be probably, you could expect closer to a floor game from Zeke, but I think that also makes him like a fine play. A floor game from Zeke, I think, could be enough to make a utility spot in this tournament. I would say the same thing for Tony Pollard too. I'll definitely have more exposure than those guys just because of the fact that Fournette and White coming up. We're not seeing Pollard, not seeing Zeke. Those are signs that these guys are just going to be a little bit under-owned relative to what they should be. Okay. Nice set of headlights on that one. Yes, a very classy approach there by our guy Ross. So let's identify some lineups that I think fit all this criteria that could be unique to go to here. And let's get different right away. I think a Mike Evans captain for a tournament will be one of the best builds you can go to. A 5-1 build favoring the Bucs would be certainly a way to get unique as well. That said, I don't want to go with the QB as the bring back just because of the fact that normally in a 5-1 onslaught build for one team, it's typically a pass catcher or a running back that catches a lot of passes coming back in that one-man spot. So let's see if we can get, let's pull up some Bucs 5-mans here. All right, these are all salaried out. This one you could swap to CeeDee Lamb. The issue with this one is it'll probably be a higher owned 5-1 onslaught because of the fact you're using up all the salary. That is one key way to get different on showdown slates. And also one thing to point out, if you have a $50,000 lineup and you're in this big DraftKings tournament with $1 million to first place, or even the play actions where there's a lot of entries as well, you're likely to get duped on pretty much every $50,000 lineup. So that's something to keep in mind. If it's like a three-way dupe, you could still win a lot of money, so it doesn't matter that much. But it is something to keep in mind. It's just a risk profile where there are some sharp showdown players out there who will limit their salary to $49,000 or less. I'm a little bit more willing to play with the higher salary stuff as long as you have an overall construction that's different than what you're expecting people to build. But I think this 5-1 here, you can make the case to go to CeeDee Lamb. You can make the case to go down, I guess, and perhaps take a Tony Pollard here as the pass catcher. That's a way to get different and leave some salary on the table. But this construction here, we have Mike Evans at captain, Tony Pollard or CeeDee Lamb or Dak Prescott, Tom Brady, Chris Godwin, Ryan Suckup, Cade Otton. These are all perfectly fine plays. You are capturing two pass catchers here. You're fading the running back, so you're not getting all that Leonard Fournette, all that Rachaad White ownership. Those guys are good plays, but it's not about playing the best plays in showdown. It's about the analogy that I use every time. It's about trying to put your little Monopoly hotel in the place where nobody else is trying to build theirs. That's where you get the value in these kind of tournaments. So I think this Mike Evans build will be one of my favorites to identify right away. Let's also look at some of these Cowboys 5-man stacks. Let me remove the filter because Fantasy Cruncher changed some stuff. So Cowboys 5-mans. Okay, we don't want one. We want one with the pass catcher coming back. This one's interesting. Again, it would be nice to see a little bit of lower salary. Can we go Noah Brown to... No, T.Y. Hilton's too expensive. I would like to make a pivot here potentially, but this one still kind of fits the thesis, and that's the main thing we're trying to do in this exercise. CeeDee Lamb at captain, Dak Prescott, Chris Godwin, Ezekiel Elliott, Brett Maher, Noah Brown. Again, you have the 5-1 build favoring the Cowboys. You don't get the Cowboys D in, which is another thing that I would like. Let's play with this one and see if we can make this into something that fits a little bit more what I liked about this build. We'll go Cowboys D. We'll come off the kickers because we felt like the kicker is going to be overowned. Let's see. Can't get one of the running backs now. I really would like to get to T.Y. Hilton instead of Noah Brown because I think people overown Noah Brown. And T.Y. Hilton to me looks pretty good. All right, this one looks okay to me. So you're fading the Dallas running backs, which again will be not as highly owned as you would think it would be. That's something where I think people will still put in some amount of Cowboys running backs, but the projection people will use them a little bit less than they should. So you have CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, Chris Godwin, Cowboys D, T.Y. Hilton, Dalton Schultz. So we're getting leverage on a little bit of Noah Brown ownership there with T.Y. Hilton, the guy that I think meaningfully eats off of Noah Brown's plate. We're also getting Dalton Schultz in the mix, who's going to be a less sexy pass catcher than guys like Michael Gallup. Certainly a guy who's got the high upside outside. I think this build makes sense to me. You're also getting away from kicker. Be nice to be able to fit in a running back, but I think you'd probably have to come down on Godwin a little bit to make that work. So you'd have to go Russell Gage. I guess let's put in Russell Gage here. Again, this is just the concept of a 5-1 build, but I'm just trying to play with it, see if I could find one that does everything I would look for. All right, well, let's say that Zeke punches in some bullshit touchdowns as he is known to do. We have the Cowboys D. This one kind of works for me. I don't love Russell Gage overall, especially if Julio Jones is going to be active today. But CD at captain, Dak, Russell Gage, Cowboys D, T.Y. Hilton, Ezekiel Elliott. You're saying that T.Y. Hilton takes enough off the table that Michael Gallup and Dalton Schultz can't get there. Also, Tony Pollard, I guess, would kind of fit. Ezekiel Elliott punches in a touchdown or two. Russell Gage, let's say that Mike Evans and Chris Godwin can't get open. I still think Chris Godwin is the best play. Mike Evans, the highest upside tournament play. But that said, it's, again, just trying to build something people are going to be uncomfortable with. I think this build does make sense as one that gets away from everything, leaves a lot of money on the table, and gives you some upside here in a 5-1 onslaught kind of build. Schultz, captain viable. Let's see how that looks. I think this is not a bad matchup for Dalton Schultz overall on the year. Tampa Bay 24th versus tight end according to DVOA, an 8% boost to the position. Dalton Schultz, certainly a guy who could take targets away from the other pass catchers. So let's see what we get if we have Dalton Schultz at captain. Not going to be that highly owned according to Stochastic. We did, in fact, have Schultz at 6% captain ownership. So this looks pretty good. Dalton Schultz we have here at captain. Let's try to get let's get a 4-2 Cowboys. This one is nice. Dalton Schultz at captain, CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, Chris Godwin, Leonard Fournette, Noah Brown. Again, I still feel reservations for Noah Brown. Maybe go 2 tight ends. Oh, you could get T.Y. Hilton in here. Yes, I would do that. I would honestly be willing to do full salary for this one because I don't think people will play T.Y. Hilton and Dalton Schultz a captain that often. This one, Schultz, Lamb, Prescott, Godwin, Fournette, Hilton. You're using the full salary, so that's a little bit of a risk getting duped. That said, I think you're cutting out Tom Brady. It is very possible that Tom Brady's pass game work gets concentrated into 1 or 2 guys. Brady could sneak in a touchdown. It makes it a little bit more of a risk, but I would certainly try to err on the side of forcing Brady in. Like if you're playing him in the flex, I would try to include a pass catcher. If you're playing Brady at captain, you're trying to get 2 pass catchers in. So because Brady's not going to run that much to really give you the upside you need for him to make it on his own. It's more likely that he generates PPR points for a Godwin, more likely that he generates points downfield for a Mike Evans. I think Godwin and Fournette here are capturing the best of the Bucs, but you are using all that salary, so that's sort of the risk profile. I feel like the scripts are either Bucs score 10-14 earlier and their PROE significantly paces up the Cowboys, or Bucs fall behind and the Cowboys can control the game, Zeke and DST. I think those are decent game scripts. I mean, I try to worry less about the overall game script for some of these things. Obviously, you don't want things to directly go against each other, but it's more just finding like, okay, I don't have Tom Brady here. I want a pass catcher then. I don't have, I have a lot of pass catchers from one team here. I have 3 pass catchers from Dallas. That means that's probably a time to see if you can get Dak in at captain. Like that's what I care about the most. I guess if you're building one lineup, you should try to tell a story more. If you're trying to put in 80 or whatever I am today, I think that's where you can start to worry more about just the projections and things correlating correctly or as best they can. T.Y. Hilton with an onslaught. To be clear, this is not one that I would want to play for myself, but let's see if we can find. Yeah, T.Y. Hilton not even coming up with 33% randomness or 66%. You can make that play. It feels kind of thin to me. I think T.Y. Hilton's a better play as utility personally, but one thing that I do have as a rule generally, like I cap out the exposures at captain here at 20%. So if I'm not getting a guy at 33% randomness, not getting him at 66% randomness, I'll run a 99% and a 129% one too. But it's hard to sort of justify that guy because there is only so far you can stretch projections to try to make them work. You still want things that come in a projectable range that still come up with, a certain amount of randomness on Fantasy Cruncher. So if it's not coming up, I think that tends to make it more of a play that's not ideal for you to go to, but it's $1 million. Like try what you want to try. All right. So my 3 takeaways that I'll try to give right now, and this is going to be one where there's just a lot to point to here. First thing would be don't play 2 kickers. I think with the data, it's going to make it very easy to do that, to get in 2 kicker lineups. I think that's a mistake right away. That's an obvious one, but I will take that as a pro tip up top because I think people will be tempted to do it. Would not play 2 kickers today. You can make the case, I guess, to play some kicker at captain too, but just be less reliant on kickers. I think this is a slate where people will try to jam in kickers more than they should because the salary savings, because of the fact the Cowboys D is so expensive and the Bucs D hasn't had a ton of upside. I'd rather play both defenses, I think, at this point over the kickers relative to what I'm seeing so far. Other things here, second pro tip, get away from the QB captains. Like that's something that doesn't win a lot. I think it was one of the guys who's like a top DFS pro who's always tilting on Twitter. Is it RBS, whatever his name is? One of the guys tweeted recently that like it's a fish play to play captain overall QBs just because of the fact they've only won, I think, once or twice this year. I feel like a Lamar game where he had a triple stack hit, and then there was maybe one other one. Basically, QB captains, they win more than they've probably shown throughout the season, but they're also overowned a lot, and especially on a slate where the QB is cheaper than his wide receiver on Dallas, and Tom Brady's the other QB. I think captain ownership for QB is going to be really high, so I don't mind pushing more towards the pass catchers, pushing more towards the running backs. There we go. Antoine Murphy jumping over here. Appreciate seeing your name, friend, but this is the kind of Antoine Murphy takes I remember from my stochastic days. Dak is definitely viable at captain. I think he's viable, but he's more viable if you are trying to get different somewhere else. So like if you're playing Dak with 3 of his potential pass catchers, then yes, I think that's a viable build. If you're playing Dak with 1 guy, you're playing Dak with 2 guys. If you're playing an unstacked Dak as a QB captain, I think that's going to be a mistake tonight. I think that's something a lot of people will do. And it's really, again, it's not about the best plays. It's not about the guys that you want to have the highest upside for. It's about how this overall lineup work, not in a narrative way, but like Dak to be a captain has to generate value for himself on the ground. He has to generate value for probably 1 or 2 more pass catchers. I would say probably at least 2. And then it's something too, where he has to outscore those pass catchers. So if CeeDee Lamb has an outlier day, he's more likely to be a captain. I think that's a mistake a lot of the casual players make, or a lot of the guys just kind of jamming some lineups in make. So I would try to eliminate that right away. And then my third pro tip, I think, would be to try to push towards the defenders here. Defenders and Cowboys running backs, really. I think they project worse than the opportunity is going to be for them tonight. As you know, D. Owens was saying, there are certainly some game script things you could point to that makes sense in terms of Dallas actually being able to win the game and also being able to take control early and seize control and hold on to it throughout the game. So I think a Cowboys D with a running back would be a build that looks good. But also, I just think Cowboys D has a good amount of upside here. It's a tough price point to hit, so I wouldn't try to force him in a captain or anything like that. But I think they're in as a utility play that has some upside, can get some sacks, can get some turnovers, can maybe get that touchdown. And also they have a good returner. Like Kevontae Turpin, is assuming that he's active, and I would think he is based on how he played throughout this year. That guy can break a touchdown too. So I wouldn't double dip or anything with him. But I do think that's a good way to look at that defense overall. So they have ability to score in a lot of different ways in this game. So I would say just try to get some more Cowboys D. Don't be afraid of the Bucs D either. But the defenses, to me, I think are going to be less of a priority than they should be on the slate. When you have two QBs who turn the ball over pretty well, like Dak on the year, just shy of a 4% interception rate, so he's above league average there. Tom Brady sees a good amount of pressure on the year and doesn't do the best. He has a 44 QB rating when he is under pressure. Those are bad signs for those guys. So I think there's some possibility to see some turnovers here. That's how I would approach that. But I think that covers it for this slate, guys. So unless somebody has any questions, I'll give you guys the floor for a minute here. We can do a quick update on playoff best ball too, just because of the fact I know people are curious about that. And as I've talked about countless times before, I don't think that playoff best ball stuff, the advance rate stuff, is the most important, but I am pretty happy about how this is looking so far. 32% advance rate in the gauntlet, 31% advance rate in the gauntlet 2 so far. Mitten will be advancing 1, didn't do a lot in the Mitten or the Mitten 2. And Mitten 3, just shy of 50% in the Mitten 3. And right now on pace for 58% advance rate in the Mitten 4. A lot of Brock Purdy. So if I know quarterbacks like I know Brock Purdy, then I think we'll be a good condition on this slate. The playoff best ball is a lot of fun. So I don't know if I'll be doing some of the returns tournaments this week, but definitely a possibility to jump in for a little more there. But I think we covered the edge in playoff best ball overall. So hopefully you guys took advantage of what we talked about last week and went there. All right. What will future content look like? Great question, Ross. I haven't prepared much past today, but the goal is to do 5 streams this week. So we'll see how it goes. I don't think there'll be many pre-edited things this week. It'll probably be more of a live hang thing. Tomorrow, maybe a DFS first look, assuming those tournaments are out and priced appropriately. Might do some futures betting as well. But I think that's the kind of thing that I need to figure out on the fly. Trust me, if you can, of course, subscribe to Splash Play. Let me pull up the flashing GIFs so we know what to do here. Subscribe to Splash Play, like the video, leave a comment down below. Hopefully this video covered everything. That'll give you some edges on tonight's showdown. We've been really good at them all season long. Like even when I haven't had personal wins, I think there've been some good pro tips if you do want to take a more contrarian approach and get different. So follow those 3 pro tips. If you want to try to get different, I think it'll help you out a bit. But of course, Splash Play 5 days a week here. Doesn't matter what's going on. I'm going to figure out a way to do 5 days a week of content. That's what I promise you. Maybe some NFL draft stuff coming tomorrow. We'll figure that out. Other questions real fast. Zeroing out on FanDuel and Yahoo, mostly minus EV with the lack of salary multiplier. I'm not big on FanDuel. I don't also never play on Yahoo, so I can't speak to that. But FanDuel, to me, less of an edge than DraftKings. I know a lot of sharp players believe that too. It's just, you're going to chop a lot no matter what you're going to do on FanDuel. Like you just can't get unique in the same ways. And Willie K wants me to eat things and do some mukbangs. If you guys want to watch me chew on things, I guess. So right now, again, these are my skinny legend days. So I would be watching me drink a protein shake right now. Either way, follow me at Chris Spags. Follow this show at Splash Play Pod. I will be back with you guys tomorrow, come hell or high water. And I wish you guys the best of luck tonight. I think this is a good showdown slate, one where there should be some edges. Personally, I'd favor Dallas, but just try to get unique based on what we talked about here. It's $1 million up top. If you're going to do that pure uncut stuff, fade Tom Brady, go Dallas heavy. I think that's what I would try to do personally, but there's a lot of ways to win money tonight, and I hope you guys do it. If I don't take down first place, I better see one of you guys there. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Good luck.